Everybody, welcome back to the Restored to More podcast. We are so excited for this episode. We have Laurie Krieg with us. Charity, tell us a little about Laurie.
Laurie Krieg is a speaker, author, and host of Hole in My Heart podcast. She speaks and trains extensively on the gospel, sexuality, and marriage, most often alongside her licensed therapist husband, Matt. Laurie also serves on the board of the Center for Faith, Sexuality, and Gender, and is earning a master's degree from Wheaton Graduate School in Evangelism and Leadership. Laurie and Matt recently published their first book, An Impossible Marriage, and the pair live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with their 3 kids and St. Bernadoodle puppy Bingo. Welcome, Laurie.
I'm glad Bingo got in there. That's important.
She needs to get in. Yeah. She's like a small bear and very huggable.
Love that.
Oh my gosh, so good. We're so excited to have you on our show today. I've heard many podcast episodes from other interviews that you've done and also listened to your podcast. And we are so, so blessed to have you on the show today. So thanks for being here.
So glad to be with you guys. It's awesome.
Well, before we dive in, for those who don't know your story, could you share just a quick summary of your story and how you got to be where you're at today?
Yeah. So I always start with the Hole in My Heart podcast. And so I start actually with that hole in my heart that we were all born with. Maybe you've heard it and maybe rolled your eyes at it. I don't know. But I really believe that God has created us good and needy. And with these good needs for Him, to be completed by Him as the creator, and that creation, we look through creation, not to creation, to the creator who completes us. So what are some of those needs? Instead of just being like, oh, you just need Jesus. It's like, no, He created us good and needy with a need for purpose. You see that before the fall, like with the Adam and Eve. He gave them purpose to belong, to be seen and known and loved and affirmed. Why did God say it's good? We have this desire in us to be affirmed verbally. But we're all born post-fall, darn it. So instead of looking through creation, we do look to creation. And so I got like a bunch of issues. I'll just share a few, if you don't mind.
No.
That I've got, that we all have, and this is how I phrase it. We all have natural to us, because of the fall, defaults, predispositions, or orientations, if you will, to get the good needs of our heart met, to be seen and known and loved and belong and purpose and unique. We have those good needs to be seen and known in ways that don't actually satisfy us and don't glorify God. We're all born that way. Now I got some church acceptable ones and I got some church unacceptable ones. Church acceptable, performance, people pleasing, the huge. Church actually really likes those idols, often imperfectly, because it makes me do more. Sure. And then I keep doing more, and then I keep going back to them. And then I also believe I was born because of the fall to get those good needs in my heart met in ways that don't actually satisfy and don't glorify God in sexual relationships with women. I honestly think because of the fall, was born with that default. Now, then there's things that can happen to us that can like really cement those neural pathways, just like when we keep getting the thumbs up with our performance-centered identity and our people-pleasing centered identity. Those really cement those neural pathways that I will feel seen and known and loved in this way, not to God. We give God lip service, but our actions show otherwise. So then I hit college. And I feel these things inside. I'm still running, trying to get to my 4.0. And I feel this draw toward women. Now, I grew up in an amazing Christian home, but I also grew up in Christian culture in the 90s. Now, the conversation around LGBT in the 90s was not great.
Yeah.
We still have a lot of work to do, but it was very war on marriage. There's this gay agenda that's going to come and like murder the family or something like that. So I wasn't like, this is my version of sexual brokenness that I get to surrender to the Lordship of Christ, just like everyone else is called to do. It was like, I got to take this one and fragment myself. Then I get to college, my Christian college, where I'm doing lots of good Christian stuff. Remember my other issues? And I meet another girl who feels the same way about me as I do about her. And I didn't mean for it to turn into a same-sex relationship, but there I was. My dad was a pastor and I hated myself so much. And I was either going to kill myself or come out as a lesbian atheist because I honestly believed God's design for marriage. I just didn't think I could live it without wanting to die. And I didn't think I could go to anyone with this. So that suicidal ideation, however, a friend said, hey, maybe you should talk to someone about that. I was like, fine, probably shouldn't want to kill myself. And I see a therapist, and she was less therapist and more like, you ever just meet people who you're like, I don't think they are actually walking on the same earth I am, because they know God so well. They're like floating. And her name was Carolyn, and she never pulled out Leviticus, Romans 1, 1 Corinthians 6, Timothy, whatever, Titus. She helped me to name those good needs inside.
Wow.
Laurie, when you're envisioning the ideal perfect woman, what are you picturing? I'm not going to tell you that, Carolyn, because you're old and that's weird. I had nothing to lose. That's what I told her. And I was so shocked that the words that came tumbling out of my mouth were not sexual words. They were heart words. That I want to be seen and known and loved, and looked in my eyes and just accepted as I am. And she looked in my eye, which looking in someone's eyes when they hate themselves is a great way to remove shame. She said, those are not bad things. You're just running to the wrong place. Now, the right place was not to a dude. That's also called idolatry.
100%.
The right place was to the Lord. And I said, but don't say Jesus. I know Jesus, and I'm like a super Christian. But you guys, I had a lot of barriers between those good needs in my heart and the need meter of my soul, including lies and self-hatred and pain from the church rejecting me, and pain in my past. I have some trauma history, which I think we're going to get into, that I didn't know I could take to the Lord and he could process with me. And so she came alongside me, not with some strange therapeutic technique to try and make me straight. She came alongside me with good old-fashioned spiritual disciplines, including the primary ones being lament, which is, I call that venting about the pain of the world to someone, capital S, who can do something about it. God can handle all our mess, and I didn't really know that. I didn't have to clean myself up for him. I had to just sink myself, all of me, down deeper into him. Sink your roots down into the soil of his marvelous love, as it says, I believe, in Colossians. And I fell in love with Jesus. I fell in love not with men, and I still felt the attractions toward women, but I just was able to surrender them, because Ephesians 3 says, about God's love, may you know this love, though it is so great, you will never fully comprehend it. But then you'll be filled with the fullness of life and power that comes from God. God's love empowers us to die to self. And so that's what I'm still doing.
Wow. We could just end the podcast right there. We could just be like, all right, we're good. See you guys. Go buy her book. Go sign up for this program. Go to your intensives you have coming up. I mean, Laurie, you're so articulate. That's amazing. I'm just like, I need to go take articulation notes. Seriously, I just feel like there is so much you just said, and I'm so grateful for it. And it's crazy that I feel like I relate to it, right? I never had same-sex attraction, and that wasn't ever something that I struggled with. But with my obsession with pornography and even with sex growing up from a young age, there's so much there that you said that I'm like, I get it. Like I get, for me, it was a sexual experience that was so dark. It was so broken that it led to thoughts of suicide after a missions trip. And I was like, I don't know what to do, because I can't live without this. Like, I don't think it's possible to live without this. This is a part of my life. It's part of me. It's not only do I enjoy it, but I hate it at the same time. And it's like, I don't think, and then I prayed and God didn't take it away. I'm sure in your Christian walk, you asked that God would just fix me. God, just take it away. I'll be good. And I just feel like there's so much there that is so deep. And I think most Christians aren't talking about it. And that's that God doesn't just want to have a fix-it relationship with us. He wants us to show up and surrender. And at the same time, he wants to meet those deep, deep, deep needs that we're trying to fill with something else.
Yes.
Can I ask how old were you when you started having those same-sex attractions to women?
Probably around 5 is when I first noticed it. And it wasn't like obsessive for me, like until I started engaging it in college. Then I was like, I'm like a crack addict. Like, I don't know how to like not go back to my girlfriend, but that's what idols are, right?
Yeah.
No matter who the gender is or what it is, it's, you know, Peter says you're a slave to whatever controls you. And so these control us because we go to these places that we think are going to satisfy, and then we feel worse. We just keep going back like a dog to his vomit.
Yeah.
So true.
Can I ask a vulnerable question? One more question. My question, and you can choose to answer this or not. Absolutely. The question would be, what was it that you found out was leaning you towards that? What was the deep root cause when you did your work and you're like, wow, these are the needs that I'm trying to meet? Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
So causation is a rough question because there's not, I mean, medically, you know, Johns Hopkins did a big study, and like, you know, is it nature or nurture? They've basically determined it's inconclusive, but you can't like point to a gene. So I do believe though, are all of our genetics affected by the fall? Definitely, including all of our sexuality, for sure. I'd love for someone to raise their hand and be like, I'm the perfect embodiment of sexual wholeness from start to finish. And so I think that could be part of the origin story. And then we've got, you know, I have trauma in my past, both from men and women. And now I don't look at that as causation, but it doesn't help. Totally. That's all I say. It doesn't help.
Yeah, seriously.
And then, you know, then I look in the heart, like, what was I looking for? It's similar to what I hear, you know, in boy crazy girls, you know, and teenagers. For me, it's to be seen. And that's the biggest one, just noticed. Like, you know how you maybe you guys can't relate, but just like the little things you do, someone just to notice those. And so I think as women, we can be more noticing of little things. And so that's a draw, but I don't think it's causation. Yeah. So a huge piece in my healing was seeing God was not the person who sent the traumas to me. That was a big lie that I believed, was that God was punishing me. We all misinterpret. If we've had capital T trauma or lowercase trauma, we always misinterpret, especially if it happens to us as kids. So that was huge, is like really just basic biblical theology, knowing that God, like, he grieved with me, like, so seeing where was he in those scenes, and then seeing him as mother and father. Men and women are made in God's image. Ever think about that? So finding all those like motherly characteristic verses of God, that was super healing for me. And then seeing that he notices you. He's always looking across the room at you, winking when you feel so overlooked. He just always sees you. He just cares. And it's not like, oh, I'm obsessed with you because you're God. It's like, I see you. Let's go. Let's go love people. But I see you. That's so sweet. The best spouse can never do that. So none of that like the healing didn't make me straight. I still struggle, but it's just, I surrender it. It's just easier when it's the explosive power of a new affection. When you know God's love, you're just like, oh, I want to surrender. And then the question became, what am I called to, singleness or marriage? And then for me, he called me to marriage, and he didn't have me fall in love with all men. That would be weird. But he had me fall in love with one man, Matt, and we've been married 12 years.
Wow. What an incredible story and journey. And just even hearing the small glimpse of what you just shared is like, it was a journey and it's a process. You know, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, this happened and now life's great.
Now I'll write a book.
I love what you just shared, like, and I still struggle because I think sometimes we just believe, like, you know, now that you surrender to God, like, there's no temptation, no struggle, no sin. It's like, no, we live in a fallen world and we're still fallen. That's the reality of it. You know? That's
the reality. That's just true.
So amazing. I literally got goosebumps multiple times that you were sharing, and I just felt the Holy Spirit speaking through you and got teary-eyed at multiple moments. So That was incredible. Well, let's talk about your marriage, because now, right now, all this happened. There's change. He's called you to marriage. I know Matt also has a story. If you wouldn't mind kind of sharing what that looked like. Did you already know that he had struggled with some sexual brokenness, or did that kind of get revealed in your guys' marriage?
Right. I think our story isn't too uncommon to other couples who've walked a similar path, as far as he had alluded to struggling with it in the past, but now he had his dude bros, and now they had battled it, and dude bro words. So, and I think he really
That's about it right there.
it.
That's about that. That actually summarizes probably 90% of our experiences. So that was pretty spot on there, Laurie. Way to go.
Thank you. I really don't want to say that to belittle. And I honestly think Matt meant it as much as his heart knew how to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like many other guys can discover, and I know women struggle with pornography too. That hasn't been part of my journey. I'm thankful for it's been Matt's. But a year into marriage, and it wasn't like he realized I couldn't make his heart issues go away.
Yep.
Like, and then he fell back in and fell hard. Now, usually at this moment when I'm sharing our story, people are like, but I know your story, Laurie, and you're broken and you're attracted to girls. It's probably your fault that Matt dove into that. No, we were actually I was doing great. Like the first 6.5 years, physical intimacy was fine, but Matt hadn't done the hard work I had. I'm just being honest. I'm shooting straight with you. No pun intended. I'm just being honest. Please. He didn't do the hard work. He didn't know the language. He didn't know his own heart. He didn't know what he was running from, why he was running to porn. He just felt like it was
at this point.
He had gone to seminary, and we were actually missionaries helping at-risk youth in California, and he just hated himself with so much hatred. And then he in the middle of the night, God convicted him. He had actually had a love encounter with the Lord, and it sounds so dumb and cheesy. He went to someone because he was depressed, who was like more like a prophet as opposed to like a counselor. And I don't whatever, we don't need to get into like what's a prophet. It's basically she just wanted to usher people before the Lord, and Matt was like, what do I got to lose? But he was terrified she was gonna like see into his soul and be like, you are the man, like
serious.
But he actually, what God like spoke to him was how much God loved him. And for God's love does a lot of stuff, empowers us to die to ourselves. And so it was about a month later, Matt got the courage to tell me in the middle of the night that he'd been lying to me for 6 years. Because I had asked him every once in a while, like, hey, like, how's it going there? I know guys struggle with lust. He's like, great. Secretly dying. And so that was 2015, February. And he hasn't looked at porn since. It wasn't though just rules, as you guys know. It was boundaries plus heart work. And we launched the ministry that June, and we prayed a lot because I was like, who even are we? Like, what's up with you? You're like super broken. A good one. Which again, we hear pride. Yes. I had to work on it. But God just uses us where we're at, and he really started like diving into healing and sold every screen he had and had a dumb phone for years, and really started like practicing about 2 years after that.
Wow. What's amazing is he knew your story, right? Like, it's not like you didn't share with him everything that you had struggled with, yet what sin does is it makes us feel so alone and like we can't share it with anyone. So the fact that he even knew your story, that you had felt alone, that you had hidden shame, he still didn't even feel like he could share that with you is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what you said, Laurie. And it's crazy how simple it is that we all want the same thing. We all want intimacy. We all want to be fully known and fully loved. And we just believe because of a lot of things, I think our fallen nature, the fall, we have an enemy of our soul. If we are a believer and we're trying to walk with God, there's so much there that the world tells us you're only accepted if you have all these things, look like this, do these things, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have this belief in our mind that if people really knew me, they wouldn't love me. If people really knew the evil that I do, and they would cast me out. There's no way I'd be accepted. And it's amazing to see that you guys both have had your own journey of that, and you both been willing to work on that.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit, you have this going on. You feel like you're called to marriage, which I would love to do. I'd love to ask about that. I don't know if I have time today, but like, you're like, cause I mean, I'm sure it's a journey, right? Like going from same-sex attraction and be like, God, what are you calling me to? That sounds like a Jonah thing. Like, you're like, oh, I'm going to have you go over here. And you're like, I don't know if I want to go over here. Maybe you did. You said you actually, no, I don't know. I got to ask you now. I'm already
all right.
Far away.
Well, I really loved God, and like I'm sure, well, I'm assuming if you guys have gone through some deep suffering and you've chosen God through it, that intimacy that can be cultivated in that season is real sweet with the Lord. And so that was what was going on with me, is I was like, man, God is my husband. And like, oh, I started getting hopeful, less depressed, and I'm going to go move to one of the coasts. I'll be a professor, get my PhD, and it's just me and Jesus. And I was like really okay with that. And then when you give your life to Jesus, we're supposed to give all of our lives to Jesus. And so I asked the question, probably like with one eye half closed, like, what are you calling me to? And I sensed, even as I was asking that, I was probably not even listening perfectly, whatever that means, but I sensed his hand on my shoulder saying, I have someone for you. And I said, no. No. Like, I know you're designed for marriage now. And but I loved God. And First John says, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. And there's been seasons where I've read 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, which is all about love and about obedience that results from that love. And I've been like, God is a rule monger.
100%. Yeah.
But when you really experience love and grace, you don't see the rules as evil. You see them as safety. So it's like, oh, okay. So you made me and you know what's best. So maybe I can trust you with this thing called my life and even the future. And my marriage. Ugh. And it was so strange, you guys. I'd already known Matt before, and we actually had dated for a season, and then it was so messy. Read our book. It's too messy. To only follow stuff that looks like Jesus. Don't follow my life prescriptively, please. But there was this sweet friendship that was God. I don't know how to say it other than he was weaving our hearts together. And there was something about Matt that made me go, huh. And God can work with And long story short, I ended up reaching out to him after that season because God just brought him to mind. And we were married within like 7 months or something. Wow. So bananas. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. So then Matt shares in the middle of the night this struggle that went on for 6 years.
Yeah. How did you respond? Were you like, I forgive you? Or were you mad? Was there trauma there? What was your response?
He like immediately was like, and I need you to, here's this, and I need you to forgive me. And I was like, I forgive you. Wait, what? So I did that initially. Then it was like rage. And then it was, I'll be honest, like, you had mentioned, Laurie, he knew about your stuff. Why didn't he feel safe to share with you? Like, that makes no sense. I wasn't very safe for him. So a reigning theme in those first 6-7 years were, Matt, you were the one guy I trusted. Like, of all the guys, you're the one I picked. You're awesome. You're a man of integrity. I literally speak this over him on the regs. You're a man of integrity. I'm so glad I can trust you. And then inside his heart, he's just dying, right? Because he is lying to me. He's essentially cheating on me. And so this comes out and I'm like, what? My like feminist self's ready to murder. And I'm like, do you not know that porn like promotes sex trafficking? That's like the worst thing ever on the planet. And of course he knows. But you don't think about that when you're running to porn. You just think heart, this is going to fix it. You don't even really think about your heart. Okay. Then the Holy Spirit, about 3 days into my rage ball, said, Laurie, ask Matt why he runs toward pornography. Fine. Matt, why do you go there? He's like, couldn't even look at me. I just feel so worthless. And I feel like that I get worth and that I'm seen and known and loved. Holy Spirit to me, Laurie, sure, you don't struggle with porn, but when you run toward girls, why do you run there in your mind, or you feel like extra attraction? Because I want to be seen and known and loved. So at a heart level, you both run toward what again? Women. So same running toward. Yeah, but his is on the screen. It's worse. Is it, Laurie? So you run to the same thing for the same reasons. So it was the Holy Spirit just was like, look heart to heart, stop judging his sin and look heart to heart, Laurie. And it just deflated my rage. Now, there was about a year of forgiveness because honestly, it was the lying that was harder than the actual event, although that was hard too. But that was a huge instigator into our healing journey.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I'm just writing notes over here because I'm like, man, this is so good. Like, it's really getting to the heart and asking yourself, like, how can you relate on a heart level? Like, it's not really about talking even about like the sin or anything. It's just like, how can we both relate on a heart level? Because that's what really helped me in my own journey start getting support in recovery, because I realized I too have shortcomings. I am not a perfect human being. Yes, I wasn't looking at, a screen and didn't quote unquote like cheat, but there are other things. I was not a safe person for my husband. I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I had my own past sexual brokenness that I needed to heal from that I wasn't. I mean, talking about, we haven't gone there yet, but I had old wounds from childhood trauma that had happened. Actually molested when I was a young girl that was keeping me from being fully known, fully loved for my husband, and didn't know that until all this came out, right? It's funny. You always think that you're like healed from something and then something like triggers you and you're like, dang it. I have to go there. I don't want to go there.
I know.
You can't relate to that, right?
No, none of that.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Laurie? We were talking about that when your daughter was 8.
No, so oldest daughter turned 3 or 4.
Right. Okay.
So it's the same age I was when something happened to me that I didn't remember. So I had done some processing of events that were painful, molestations that happened by strangers or family friends. So I'd already processed those in counseling. I'd been in counseling a bunch of times. And my daughter turns the age I was when something suppressed had happened. And it just like, I lost it. I don't know what to say. It's just like, I'd go in certain rooms and it just would, something would just click. And then Matt would enter like the room. And then I would just get so either angry at him or I just shut down. And I was like, this doesn't seem normal. But I didn't know how to get at it. I used all the tools in my toolbox and it was like, it wouldn't move. And the more it hung out there, the more it started to magnetize to these default attractions toward women that I had been gladly surrendering, now then at that point, 8-9 years. And it asked the question, what do you want? That's a dangerous question. It can be a good question when sitting in the hands of Jesus and with accountability, but when it's just you and that question, just sucking on it like candy, it's just, I call it what if candy. And you're like, oh, what if I left? What if I built another life? What if I wasn't here? And that's not technically cheating, is it? But it's coveting. And I didn't start talking to anyone. I didn't have any people on the side. I wasn't looking at porn. It just was, what if I'm not here? And I just didn't feel any, like the sweet friendship relationship that would turn into more romantic with Matt, but just this holistic, beautiful on mission thing that we had, it was just like frozen. I was like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. And I took that question on a silent retreat, and I went back and forth with God. And I literally made a pro-con list of leaving my marriage. Do you want me to go there? Can we talk about that, or you guys want to talk more trauma questions?
Oh, no, that was good.
Going.
Keep going.
Come on, yeah.
All right. So winter in Michigan. So you got like a foot of snow on the ground, and I'm just looking over this beautiful sparkling snow, and I'm going back and forth on my computer with God as I'm writing this pro-con list. Pro of leaving is I wouldn't have to keep fighting so much. Like, so I'm a public figure, whatever that means. I'm not famous by any stretch of the word, but whatever. People know my story. People know me around here. And I don't know how to tell you how hard it is to have your very existence be controversial. It's so exhausting to have your marriage and even your children be fruit of something that the world is like, that should not exist. You should go find your person. I have people try and rescue me from my marriage, like on the regular. It's exhausting. So pro of leaving, I wouldn't have to fight anymore. Con, I probably lose some friends. Like, I actually have some real wonderful friends who are very supportive of us. But I'd be like, oh, I could just write them off as haters and they don't really understand. And I actually have the upper hand on Bible. And pro of leaving, maybe I could finally find my person. Isn't fantasy so fantastical? Never real life. Con, I actually like Matt. He's actually a really amazing person. I'd miss him. Con, I'd hate to confuse my kids. And then I remembered the book of Jude, which I had read the day before because I was still doing my Bible reading plan while I was wrestling with staying in my marriage, which goes to tell you, Bible really is alive and active. I was reading Jude, and as I was doing this back and forth, it popped back into my head. And I said, God, this feels so natural to me. This feels like it's more work, like just to stay, especially right now when I don't feel this natural attraction to Matt, which a lot of people are ready to give me the get out of marriage free card because of my attractions. A lot of people. And I don't think I have that if I'm committed to a covenant marriage. And why do I get the get out of marriage free card if when you guys aren't attracted to each other, I'm sure you're not very adorable to each other every minute of the day. Why do you guys not get the get out of marriage free card? Your natural default is not toward union with someone who is so different from you, no matter whatever your natural default is. But these verses came to mind. You, my dear friends, this is verse 17, I'm starting, must remember what the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ told you, that in the last times there'll be scoffers whose purpose in life is to enjoy themselves in every evil way imaginable. Now they are here, and they are the ones who are creating divisions among you. Sounds like right now. They live by natural instinct because they do not have God's Spirit living in them. Whoa, wait. The world tells me that what's natural to me is best, and I should go find myself a wife, and that's the best thing. But the Bible's saying I can have something natural to me because I do not have God's Spirit in me. The world's telling me to live my dreams, but God, okay, fine. Well, what's your Spirit even give me? So if I follow what's natural to me, even if that's, maybe natural to me because of the fall, I don't know. What's your Spirit even give me, God? If I follow what's natural to me, what would I even lose? And I tell you what, guys, in the next 2 seconds, I experience what I can only describe as a micro taste of a life devoid of God, a life of hell. And I was so cold and so scared. And it wasn't like I felt empty and I need a sandwich. It felt like I was a black hole of emptiness and I could not suck enough life and hope and peace in me. Like I couldn't suck any of it in me. I felt so devoid of all of it. And when those 2 seconds were done, I was convinced of 2 things. Laurie, if you want actual life and hope and peace that this path before you feels like it will offer, the only source of life and hope and peace is in God. No. It's the only source. And so I knew that. I was like, okay, God, you're the only source. And if I wanted really his gifts, then I wanted God. And if I wanted God, then I was going to say yes to whatever he said to me, including this impossible marriage. And so I brought with me on this trip a question, what do you want? And I brought home with me a conviction that God, I don't know how you're going to fix our marriage. I have no idea. But I know I want you. And so I'm all in. And that's all God, that was the start. That was the start of the healing. That's actually chapter 1 of our book, is that we start here, and then the rest is hard work, but it's up to him.
What are you looking at me for?
He's crying over here, wiping away the tears. I want to know on your heart when you hear all that.
Yeah.
You took me back to a moment where I was physically fighting with my roommate, and it was good because he was fighting. I wanted to fight. I was so angry at God, and I didn't understand why being a Christian was so miserable, and why the world was so good, and why it satisfied more than God did at times. Not overall, but just at times. And I just, that feeling was so real. I even told him, we were physically fighting, and then we were wrestling, and then it ended, and it was great. And then I was like, I just want to run away. And he's like, what would you do if you ran away? And it was that whole, what do you want? And I'm like, here's what I want. And I described a whole story. I'm going to go work in this place. I'm going to go be in hospitality, and I'm going to be at this hotel that attracts beautiful women from all over the world. And I'll be able to just be this good looking guy that's tan and buff and has sex with girls every night. And I'll just be able to be this playboy dude, and I'll be able to make money. And I know I'll save up my money, and I'll eventually buy hotels down there, and I'll even own hotels. And then I can just do whatever I want and do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want. Yeah. And he was like, and then what? And then what? And then what? And it was these questions well, then I'll be happy, and then I'll be able to do this, and, I'll be free, and I won't have to follow these rules. And because God's rules are they're so burdensome, and they're so God's that person you talked about. And John, I struggle with those verses. If you love me, obey my word. I'm so then obviously I don't even love you. Let's just talk what it is. I don't even love you. And then it was and I kept going deeper and deeper into that fantasy, and eventually that fantasy, oh my gosh, it left me so alone.
Yeah.
It left me so scared.
Yeah.
And I remember being angry. I was just she's my friend, but I was damn it, God, even that sucks. There's nothing out there then. What is there? That's the best I can come up with is money and prestige and being known and sex whenever I want. And even that, it was God showed me a glimpse of that life. And I was yet again at the same point wanting to commit suicide. And then even death was scary, because what if it was without God after that? And it was so dark and so desolate. And it was and it was the same thing. That was the moment that I was okay, God, if you're telling me, and then it was what do you have to offer me? And God was that I know all those fantasies about you. I know that you even want that. And I still love you. And I still want to be with you. And even though you have those desires, I still just want to enjoy life with you. And I have such a plan for your life that maybe it isn't all those things. Maybe it isn't fun all the time. Maybe it isn't what you think enjoyable, but you're going to be known, and you're going to be loved, and we're going to walk together in this thing called life that, don't worry, it is a vapor. Don't worry. it goes by pretty quick. And I think that was what enabled me initially to make the decision to start getting healthy. Was okay, God, do whatever it takes. And I heard all that, and I went there. So I appreciate you sharing your story. It's so real.
You too. Thank you. That was encouraging. So good.
Wow. Well, we just covered a lot. And that was really, really deep, yet so satisfying and fruitful. It was just, I feel refreshed and rejuvenated, and I just want to change the world with Jesus's love.
Amen. Me too.
I want
to hear stories like that. It's just we need to share more of this.
And I think what's amazing, Laurie, what you do is so transferable to the entire church, because I think you would agree that you said acceptable sins, unacceptable sins. And I think what we're missing is the heart, because we're all craving the same thing. Like there's no, there's no person that, whether I think there, for me, I was born at 90. I grew up with the church viewing LGBTQ, all of that with that kind of a stigma that it's bad and it's horrible and it's going to do these things. And I've really struggled with that personally, just being totally honest in this podcast. And if I just take what you said there, it's a different person. It's a different attraction, but it is the same need. It is the same brokenness. And I just love that, because I want the church to know that. I want the church to not view anybody. And even me coming from struggle with pornography, there's a stigma there against guys that have that. Like, oh, that's a deeper sin. Like, whoa. And I'm sure we can do that with all kinds of stuff. And yet we're all just so broken and we're all so in need of Jesus. And it's that gives us the capacity to love versus out of a stigma that I have to love you because the Bible tells me so. Right?
No. Yeah, don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Is that 1 Thessalonians 4? Really love them from the heart. You're like, okay, I'll just try harder. But when you actually see people eye to eye and heart to heart, then you're like, oh, duh. Of course I love you.
Yeah.
Like I could do with my husband when I actually understood his issues like mine.
So, Laurie, what is this love prompting you guys to do right now? Can you tell us all about what you guys have? You have your book, An Impossible Marriage. Where can our listeners find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can go to myname.com, so lauriekrieg.com, and you can find our podcast that we're posting weekly. We're engaging marriage, LGBT, therapy stuff every week. This summer, we're actually running a reflection of the last 4 years / seasons of our podcast, just with guests that we've had, which is awesome. Love podcasting world. We're starting marriage intensives this fall. You're not going to find that site directly on our page. So email me, just go to the contact form if you're interested in a marriage intensive. We don't have it on the page because we're limiting it to 7 couples per event. And so we just have a process, and we already have 7 couples interested in this first one. So email me and I'll get you hooked up with the next one, or to apply for this first one.
We're asking really quick, what are you guys going over in the marriage intensive?
Yeah, so a lot of this heart stuff, and then we have in our book this whole metaphor that Matt came up with, just in how to view life in all of its different facets. So we call it Oneness Mountain, and then there's all these different gardens on it that we're called to cultivate with each other and gardener God. And then there's core needs are involved. And so there's like tests you're going to take. There's going to be really, what we're trying to do is cultivate oneness between the two of you. And so we're also going to do some personalized, that listening prayer that I alluded to in Lament. We want to make sure every couple has time to be able to, if they choose, we're never going to force anyone, but to take their suffering and take it to the Lord. And when you do that with your spouse, all of a sudden, all the like annoying things you like fight about up here, and all of a sudden you're hearing their little boy and little girl heart before the Lord. You're like, oh, it's little boy Matt that is like wants to be affirmed, and somehow you made the connection that porn helps you feel affirmed, or it's little girl Laurie that feels left out in her family or whatever, and somehow you run here more, you do more performing. Oh, it just takes the sting of fighting. So we're excited. I'm terrified because it's new, but I'm also really excited because I trust God more than I trust me.
It's a good place to be. That's going to be amazing.
Yes.
That's going to be a fantastic offering.
I'll just say one more. We do training, a lot of LGBT in the church training. So if your church ministry is looking for this, especially this heart work that I've been talking about, as well as practical care, we're happy to help you guys out. So just contact form. If you're like, I don't know where to find it, just contact form and we'll help you guys out.
It's great.
Wow. I'm so excited for everything that you guys are doing, and just thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for allowing God to work through you, in you, and just not hiding and staying not only in sin, but like just hiding and not sharing your story, because there's so much redemption. There's so much restoration and so much fruit coming from it because of your obedience. And I'm so grateful.
I received that. And thank you guys too. Back at you. I was exhorted and encouraged by just what you're saying in ministry before we recorded, and just sharing pieces of your story too. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. We are so grateful to have you on. You shared some incredible wisdom, and your heart is just, it's all over you. You're like, just, your heart is just there. And I hope more people see it, because I believe the more people you reach, the more people will literally see Jesus. So keep up the great work.
Thanks, man. Thank you, guys.